This is The Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral.com.
Good afternoon, Tuscaloosa, Internet world, West Alabama, everybody who's watching the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com. You're watching us on YouTube, on Facebook, or on Twitter. You're listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. We are a proud part of the BamaCentral Broadcasting Network, along with our friends Blue Collar Unplugged. You can subscribe, rate, and review to those programs at the same platforms. Blue Collar Unplugged with Jacob Pickle, Matthew Gibson, and our friend Blake Byler, who we are going to hear from today. Puts out episodes each and every week, and they just talked to Brian Pasnick this past week, and, they're going to be recapping last night's huge win, Alabama basketball over Auburn. Welcome into the Joe Gaither Show. We're going to talk all about Alabama and Auburn last night, what it means for the Crimson Tide, what it meant for Auburn, really just the atmosphere, the environment, and everything that went along with it, because there was some football news that went along with it. There was some golf news that tied along with it. It was just a weird evening, and to help me, because I absolutely need some help, is my friend Blake Byler joining us from Blue Collar Unplugged. You can follow him at Blake Byler 45. I'm going to hit that button. Yeah, that more presentable. Blake, man, how much sleep did you get last night?
Got enough after a kind of a long night. Ended up leaving. What time did we leave Coleman? Like 11:30, 12? Something like that. Yeah, it was a long night. It was weird. Weird game. Weird couple hours, but we got out of there eventually.
It was great. No, I more so mean the atmosphere and adrenaline in the 4-hour span where we get there about 5 or so. We left about 6 hours or so of just straight adrenaline into my brain, into my eyeballs. And so I didn't get to bed until late because I was trying to calm on down. Alabama winning 79-75, blowing a 14-point halftime lead, but really jumping back into first place, a three-way tie for first place in the SEC. And so let's start with my episode Monday. You may not have heard it, and that's okay if you didn't. You're a busy man. But Monday I was having a little come apart, little freak out after the Tennessee loss, thinking, oh my gosh, this team, every time they play a top 10 team, every time they play a top opponent, they lose. Every time, they just don't have what it takes to grind out, play winning basketball in crunch time. And I was sitting there saying, oh my gosh, they're probably going to get drummed by Auburn. Look, their 11-game winning streak, double digits every game in those 11 games. They're going to come into Coleman Coliseum, and fat Bruce Pearl is going to make us all sad. I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. This team's character was really on display last night. Whether you want to attribute it to the three-point shooting, the offensive rebounds, I think the bottom line is character was on display. So I want to own up to being wrong. Blake Byler was one of the ones on Saturday saying this team is going to be fine. And I was saying, fine. What are you talking about? Fine. Blake, what was your impressions of the team last night?
You kind of mentioned it and summed it up. They showed character and toughness and things that we hadn't necessarily seen from them in a game of this magnitude. Because as Nate Oates has talked about all season, like we've seen them against the Purdues of the world, the Arizonas of the world, the really good basketball teams that they've been in games with, and they've had leads, but they haven't been able to close it out. And we've seen that. And then Saturday was just kind of, to me, it felt like every year, every team has an annual, you go on the road and get your doors blown off. Like that, it happens to everybody. It's happened to Alabama every year under Nate Oates, and I'm sure before then. I'm sure it happened a number of times per year before then. But like you think about last year, Alabama went over to Norman, to Oklahoma, and lost by 30 to a very much inferior Oklahoma team. You think about the Herb Jones senior season, 2021, that team went on the road to Arkansas and got beat by 15, 16 points. And so like Alabama goes to Tennessee, they lose by 20. And it was one of those games where it was like everything went wrong. And that happens sometimes. You go on the road, the other team starts hitting shots, you can't hit anything. Big opposing crowd gets in your head, things start domino spiraling out of control. And then all of a sudden you have a 15, 20-point loss in your hands. So that didn't really concern me that much because that's how college basketball is. And sometimes you go on the road and you lose games like that. But the game that was going to be telling for me was last night's game. And Alabama showed up and they got punched in the mouth early. They after the light delay and could get the lights on, played a possession in the dark, and somehow Janai Broom, one of their lower tier 3-point shooters, hits a three in the dark. It starts the game up 3-0, and then Alabama's down, I think 12-4 at the under 16. And so from then you saw a lot of toughness. And really, I didn't think Alabama played the best game possible. Like they shot the ball decently well. I think they shot 37% from three, which is still below their season average. They had 14 turnovers. I think Jordan Harper had this stat on Twitter that Alabama was 40% from 2-point range, 8 feet and in. So that's a lot of missed layups, missed shots around the rim. And even in the second half, Alabama got outscored by 10. But still, they found a way to win the game. And Nate Oates has been talking about how this team has been really good for stretches, but they have to figure out how to win games. And last night, even though Auburn came back from down 14 points at halftime, was able to take a 1-point lead with 6-7 minutes to go, Alabama didn't fold. They kept their composure. There was a lot of leadership on the bench in the huddle, and they were able to come away with a win. And it's, like you said, kind of a character defining win and the signature win that they didn't have to this point in the season. So it's absolutely massive for them to be able to get that done and to get it done in the way that they did.
All right, so I am a total sucker. I'm a total sucker. Last night's win has got me back on board. Look, you and I have discussed that I struggle with a little bit of fandom more so than coverage, and that is absolutely fair. But I am a sucker for, oh man, you beat Alabama, you beat Auburn, you're a huge road win or huge win against the top 10 team. Everything back in front of you, and I got a little flack for basically naming the Alabama goals, the goals of make the NCAA tournament, win the SEC regular season, win the SEC tournament, and then make the Final Four. And obviously they're tiered goals. They're tiered goals, and you're not a failed season if you don't hit all 4 goals. By far, I mean, Final Four, that's absolutely absurd to expect that. I mean, but it is a goal. After last night's win, I at least feel like the top 3 goals are still like right there in the. I mean, Final Four, obviously, pipe dream, and who knows, the right draw, you might get there. But SEC regular season tournament, regular season title, and conference tournament. To me, I felt like on Saturday, hell no chance, absolutely gone. And Wednesday, I'm thinking, oh yeah, it's right there in front of us. That's the fandom swing in me. Are we still? I mean, those goals are realistic.
Yeah, I think they're certainly attainable. I mean, last night showed. I mean, I thought after Saturday, the way that the season had gone, that there was a very clear top 3 in the SEC, and I saw it to be Tennessee, Auburn, and Kentucky. You fast forward to midweek of this week, and Alabama has beaten Auburn, and Kentucky has gotten drummed on the road. Like I was saying, like every team goes on the road and gets drummed one time. But Kentucky went and lost by 13 to South Carolina, or maybe it was 20. I don't even remember.
Thank you, Lamont players.
Right. And so Alabama, like those goals, like the SEC regular season title is absolutely attainable. And it would have been a lot harder if Alabama had lost last night, because then you're looking at Auburn in first place, 6-0, and then you would have Alabama 2 games back at 4-2 with still a trip to Neville to go. So that would have been a lot more difficult. But now you look at Alabama, they're tied at 5-1 with Auburn for the lead. You've got Tennessee at 4-1. They didn't play in the midweek because I think every team this year has one week-long stretch where they don't play a midweek game. So Tennessee just kind of got theirs out of the way. But Alabama still has games against these teams in front of them. Alabama still goes to Neville to play Auburn in 2 weeks. And I don't anticipate that being a win, just because that's one of the hardest buildings to play in all of college basketball. But you still have a home game against Tennessee in March. And then you go to Rupp Arena in late February. And so Alabama still has chances against these teams. Also, you look at the upcoming schedule, it's not the most difficult thing ever. I mean, you've got LSU on Saturday at home. There's no reason Alabama should lose that game. Then you've got a road game at Georgia, which is a really tricky one. I think Georgia's better than a lot of people expected at the start of the season. I think they're sitting at 4-2 in the league. Yeah. But Alabama's still, I believe, a significantly better basketball team than Georgia is. That's a winnable game, even though it might be really challenging. I kind of see it in the same vein as the Mississippi State game a couple weeks ago that was on the road. And then you've got Mississippi State back in Coleman, which has been Alabama's been great in Coleman this season, aside from the one Clemson loss. So then let's say Alabama goes 3-0 in their next 3 games. They're 8-1 going into Auburn. So then if you go to Auburn and you lose, I mean, big deal. You're 8-2 with a lot of more with, let's see, from there, you're on the road at LSU. Fine. Then you've got home games against Texas A&M and Florida. And so the upcoming schedule has a lot of winnable games to where Alabama has now, with this win, given itself a cushion to where it can go drop the game at Auburn and still be in the hunt for the SEC regular season title. Absolutely. And then tournament, if Alabama can play well in the regular season, close out the season well, get a good seed, you never know what can happen in the SEC tournament.
All right, so that's kind of the aerial 30,000 feet view of what's happened over the last week and change and last night. Let's start talking about last night specifically, and let's start with about 5 o'clock. Oh, my gosh. I have to credit. If you guys aren't listening to Blue Collar Unplugged, you need to subscribe to Blue Collar Unplugged just for Jacob Piccolo alone. He got, I don't know, what is it, 2,200 students in that section or whatever, 2,100 students, something like that. I think that's what he told me. It was 65% full by the time I had gotten there. So what's that put you at, 1,500 students or so? 1,500 students in Coleman Coliseum by the time I'd gotten there at about 5:15 or so. So they were in there early, and that means, look, if you guys aren't living in Tuscaloosa, I understand that. It's okay. We appreciate everybody who watches the Joe Gaither show and follows BamaCentral. We love it. But it was pouring in Tuscaloosa yesterday. Pouring pretty much consistently all day. I don't know how long these students stood outside Coleman Coliseum. I did see Jacob's photos of the students getting moved into kind of the atrium before they were getting ready to go in. But I know that at least 10 minutes, at least 30 minutes, probably. The students are standing out in the rain.
I was told that people started lining up at 1.
Okay. So you're raining on them for 4 hours. You're raining on them for 4 bleeping hours to get into Coleman Coliseum. And look, I have been on the Alabama fan base a little bit on this show. The students have been there all year. The students have been there all year long. And last night's environment was absolutely wild. And I know Auburn has a lot to do with it. I get that. But Jacob, I just want to give you a big getting everybody riled up and getting everybody, okay, it's raining. We don't care. We're going to be in the building. We need to be in the building. I would love to see that attitude permeate throughout the fan base. Can we find more rabid Alabama basketball fans across West Alabama? Look, everybody credits Luke Ratliff, Fluffopotamus, and he absolutely kind of got things rolling with Crimson Chaos. But just talk about the hard work that your friend has put in over the season. Jacob Pickle, we had him on an episode at the beginning of the year. You can look that up, but you can hear him every week on Blue Collar Unplugged, the president of Crimson Chaos, really setting the table for last night's environment.
Yeah, I mean, he did a great job. Alabama students did a phenomenal job last night. And like you said, they have been great, I feel like, pretty much every game. We got kind of a taste of what they could be when they're really unleashed. Last Wednesday, when there was the ice issue with travel and people getting to Tuscaloosa, and they let in extra students, let them move down. I thought that was a really unique atmosphere against Missouri last week. But I mean, Jacob's done a great job. They had, I really liked the signs that they had last night. They had the abstract art Coleman Coliseum sign, kind of playing off the Dylan Cardwell comment he made about Coleman. They had I really like the way they leaned into the Jay Williams thing. Jay Williams obviously called said that Coleman Coliseum sounded like a tennis match when he was there to call the Clemson game. Very different environment. Last night they had a pretty loud for a tennis match sign. Somebody threw him a tennis ball for him to take a picture with them. As I was rewatching some of the game last night and this morning, Jay Williams on the call made some like, oh, this sounds nothing like a tennis match comments, which is fun. Fun to see him leaning into that. And just like the students, they were great. They've been great all season. They've shown up for every game. Obviously, Auburn brings in a big crowd every year because it's one of the biggest games of the year, especially with how good their program has gotten. But I think last night's win was really important as far as keeping the crowd engaged for the rest of the season. And whether you think that should be the case or not, like I know a lot of people will say, well, the crowd should show up every game. You can think that all you want, but that's just not reality. And I think the team captured the fan base a little more with that win last night. And so like if Alabama had lost last night, I don't know how packed the LSU game Saturday would be, because we already know with the schedule Alabama played earlier in December that there were a lot of kind of short leashes with the fan, I guess is the best way to put it, in terms of the amount of losses they could keep taking and continue having the support, even if they were losses against good teams. Not everybody really thinks in terms of the broad scope of the basketball season. They're just worried about the win and loss record, and that predicates a lot of the attendance and the support. So a win over Auburn obviously is going to get the fan base happy and involved in anything, but a win over an Auburn team that's as good as the one that came and played in Coleman last night, that's going to go a long way in terms of getting people to come out and support. I mean, Alabama has, like I said earlier, kind of established itself as a contender in the SEC now. And so we've seen last year when Alabama's a contender in the SEC, Coleman Coliseum becomes one of the toughest places to play in the entire SEC, maybe even the entire country. Alabama went 15-0 at home last year. They've lost I think 9-1 at home this year. And last year had a ton of sellouts, even games against lesser teams. Like I remember the LSU game last year was a very rowdy environment. It was on a Saturday, but LSU was not very good. And so that's the kind of environment you get whenever Alabama's really good. And I think last night's win went a long way towards getting those kind of environments. I remember Grant Nelson after the game said it'd be nice to have an environment like this in every game. I think the win went a long way towards getting that kind of environment in these remaining home games. And also, Alabama has a lot of Saturday home games left. And I think that's interesting about the schedule, because it's always the case that Saturday home games have better attendance, a better crowd than the weeknight games. So to get this weeknight win in a packed house over Auburn, it sets the tone, because I think, if I remember right, let's see, I have the schedule pulled up here. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of Alabama's remaining. It's either 6 or 7 home games are on Saturdays. So that goes a long way for them to be on Saturdays coming off this win. There's going to be some good crowds coming to the remainder of these games.
So if I can put my plea to Alabama fans or Alabama ticket holders, look, if you're not going to go, look, I'm not going to shame you, but put those tickets into someone's hands who will go. I do feel like there is a large enough contingent of Alabama basketball fans. Maybe they're not going to pay the exorbitant prices, but come on. Go put your ticket. You've already paid for them, probably. You've probably already paid for them. Go put those tickets into hands of people who are going to be excited about this program. That's my plea to you. But let's talk about the marketing department as a whole. Not only did Jacob Pickle do his part for the students, marketing brought Roll Tide William. Marketing brought Jalen Milroe on the microphone, both on the broadcast and on the PA microphone. Marketing brought Nick Dunlap for a big old cheer, and then you obviously had the DKR trophy, the halftime trophy for the Iron Bowl for football. So that brought a big cheer. Look, it was a wild night for football to be a part of the basketball program. Ryan Williams commits right before the game, recommits to Alabama right before the game. I mean, it was just a wild bleeping night right before the game. And then at the very end of the game, as soon as it hit zeros, Ryan Williams announces, oh, I'm canceling my trip to Auburn too. So like the double whammy of Ryan Williams is locked into Alabama. And then you've got Jalen Milroe on the microphone saying, look, we've got 6 minutes left, guys. Come on, give it to the team. Give it up for the team. I just thought that the entire environment was just absolutely unique. And so with that in mind, what in the world happened with the lights? The lights in the beginning of you addressed it at the very beginning, but like Nate Oates talked about it. Oh, we put some new lights in, and we went maybe 5 minutes. So was it longer than that? After the first possession, trying to figure out the lights, and then 3-4 minutes later, a Jaron Stevenson dunk jams the shot clock light on for I guess too long, and they had to stop again. You had multiple malfunctions. Was this just Nate Oates trying to say, hey, let's screw around so that we can get a new arena, or what in the world happened?
I talked to Jacob after the game actually, and he said he was told it was like actually a lightning issue, like it messed up the grid or something like that. Because those lights aren't new. They're new this season, but they weren't new to last night. From what I remember, they've had the red lights in the arena and have used them for starting lineups. So I don't think it was like something new they put in for last night's game. But obviously they malfunctioned and it caused this big delay. Really weird. A lot of stuff happened. I remember us talking about it after the game as we were kind of wrapping our coverage up. We were like, hey, do you remember when like Roll Tide Willie was getting the student section hyped up and the lights went out early in the game? And then this crazy back and forth basketball game happens and it kind of makes you forget everything that happened beforehand. It was just like this big event. That's what the game felt like. It felt like a massive event. You got the appearances from Jalen Milroe, from Malachi Moore, from Damani Jackson, all of them sitting over by the Alabama bench. You've got Milroe holding up the L, holding up the Lank symbol. You've got what else even happened? Roll Tide Willie was there yelling his.
Oh yeah, he was on the microphone. He was
on the microphone.
What the time?
Right, you had all of that, and then with the lights, I think I don't think it was anything like intentional. I think, Nate and Bruce seemed like they were having fun with it after the game. Bruce was kind of jawing at Nate, being like, hey, if you need an arena this bad, you didn't have to turn the lights off, just get one. And then Nate Oates at the end of his press conference is like, well, they shot better with the lights off, so maybe they should have left them off after they went 1 for 1 before the lights got fixed. So I think it provided something interesting. It was just another notch in another crazy meeting between Alabama and Auburn, and it seems like every single one that happens is insane, and just provided something new that we hadn't seen before. And they even thought they were going to have to shut the lights off completely. I remember the PA said they were going to shut off all the lights in the building for 45 seconds, told everybody to stay in their seats, and then it ended up getting fixed. So they didn't have to actually do that. But yeah, super interesting, and nothing that I've really experienced at a college basketball game before.
You don't think any Alabama and Auburn fans would have been fighting in the pitch black dark if they had actually shut them off, do you?
Who knows? Who's to say?
Okay, let's go on to the court. I've got a couple of topics on the court. I want to start with first. Javon Quinterly was in Coleman Coliseum last night. Oh, that's what it seemed a little. No, he wasn't. The influence was. Ryan Griffin comes off the bench and goes absolutely crazy. 4 for 4 from the 3-point line in the first half. And my point is that Ryland talked after the game saying, Nate Oates said that Javon Quinterly had a conversation with Ryland Griffin. And it just kind of made me think of a couple of different things. It made me think, one, okay, you remember Javon Quinterly bringing Alabama back 17 points from last year's game to win the SEC tournament. And then it makes me think about, was there bad blood with JQ leaving Alabama, going to Memphis? No, it very clearly is still a tight-knit group for JQ to call or discuss, or whether it was a Zoom or a text or whatever, about coming off the bench and encouraging Rylan Griffin, hey, this is what worked for me last year maybe, and this is what could work for you. And then for Rylan to just take to it and say, you know what, I've been starting, I'm going to come off the bench, and hitting 4 for 4, sparking that kind of first half stretch. Rylan, when he's in the zone, is like, there's a couple times where he took those shots where I thought, oh, no, and then nothing but net. It just an incredible performance for Rylan. And do you think we'll see more of him coming off the bench? And what does it mean to you that maybe a former player playing at another school gave him a little bit of advice?
I mean, I think that just kind of shows that Javon Quinterly still loves Alabama, and that I don't think him leaving was that he didn't like it in Tuscaloosa, or he didn't like the team, or didn't like Oates. I don't think it was any of that. I think it was just kind of a business decision for him and something that made the most sense for him in his career. But I think it's great that he has stayed in contact with his teammates and that he was able to help his former teammate in Rylan Griffin the way that he did. I think he tweeted Roll Tide or like Go Bama or something like that before the game. So he was still watching, and he was still keeping tabs on what's going on. And obviously this is a rivalry that meant a lot to him, a rivalry that he consistently played very well in and played with a chip on his shoulder in, gotten a few scuffles with some Auburn players last year, and it still gets into arguments with Auburn fans on Twitter, even while he's at Memphis. So he definitely kind of lived and breathed this rivalry that we watched last night. But as far as Rylan goes, I mean, he was excellent off the bench. The last 2 home games, he has been lights out shooting the ball. He's been great on offense. He's obviously been one of Alabama's best defenders the entire season. But then you add in the way that he's been shooting the ball, the way that he's been playing on the offensive end, it just makes a really dangerous player. And I honestly think the way, I didn't hate Oates' decision initially to bring him off the bench when I first saw that Reitzel was going to start over him. It looked like it was more for turnovers. Rylan Griffin had 5 against Tennessee, and then Reitzel averages less than 1 turnover per game. I think he has the lowest turnover rate of a guard in the rotation for Alabama. So that made sense to me, but it also didn't really work because Auburn jumped out into a big lead. Alabama needs the offensive spark. Rylan Griffin comes in, like you said, he hit the 4 threes in a row to start the game, 4 for 4, and kind of jump starts Alabama right back into the game. And I think from there, he continued to play a good game. He finished with 17 points. He hit the pull-up 3 while Alabama was up 2 late in the game to push it to 5. They gave Alabama a big cushion. I mean, there's not much else to say. He was great. I don't know if this is something that is going to continue. That's one thing I'm very interested to watch. I'm also interested to watch, to be honest, the front court as far as the starting lineup goes, because Nick Pringle has kind of fallen in the rotation a little bit in terms of the minutes he's been getting. I thought Jaron Stevenson played a phenomenal game, and he also played really well against Tennessee, and Oates was singing his praises after the game, saying that he felt like he grew up over the past couple games. So I would be interested to see if Oates maybe goes with Jaron Stevenson in the starting lineup, could slide Grant Nelson down to the 5, who knows. But as far as Rylan Griffin goes, I don't know if he's going to continue to come off the bench. I think he and Reitzel both fit that role really well. I don't know if Oates wanted to see Rylan answer this challenge and then he'll insert him back in the starting lineup. I think we're just going to have to wait till Saturday to find out, but it's certainly an option that he can go with. And if it is, it seems like Rylan has embraced that role if he has to. Oates talked about how much of a team first guy he is. So I think if that's what Oates decides to go with, that Griffin's not going to have a problem with that. And that it's still going to be, I think Oates is just going to make the decision that's best for the team.
All right, we've been hanging out with Blake Byler from Blue Collar Unplugged and our basketball expert right here at BamaCentral.com. You guys can listen to him on Blue Collar Unplugged and follow him at Blake Byler 45. All right, you are a basketball expert. I'm going to throw 3 different sequences at you. and I want you to pick the most important from last night. Okay. Auburn's on a 9-0 run, second half. They're all in the second half. Auburn's on a 9-0 run in the second half, and Grant Nelson airballs. Then you get an offensive rebound. Grant Nelson gets a cut. He gets a reverse dunk and one. All right, that gives Alabama its first points of the second half. That's scenario number one. Number two, I'm giving you Mark Sears at 8:46 left in the second half. Auburn's Trey Donaldson has just made taken the lead, taking a 1-point lead on a breakaway dunk. Mark Sears comes back down the floor, gets to the rim, makes a layup and one to give Alabama the lead again. Or at 5:22, Muhammad Wagi steps to the free throw line. He's only scored 2 points in the first half. No free throws for him. It is a 2-point spread. Is that what I have? It's a 2-point spread at the moment. And Muhammad Wagi steps up and makes 2 free throws in a row. Blake Byler, what was the most important bucket or sequence or scoring point for Alabama among those three?
That's a really good question. Those are three like really big moments. I think I have to go with Sears because that was the first and the only time that Auburn led in the second half. And I think one thing that's really interesting about this Alabama team is they are really good at answering buckets. And that happened in this game a lot. Like there were a couple times where it was a 6-point game. Auburn would hit a 3 to cut it to 3, and Alabama would come right back and hit a 3 on literally the very next possession to push it back to 6. And so that's happened in a couple of these losses. It's happened in a couple of these wins. Like Alabama has been really good at answering the opposing team's points. But I think when Auburn they took the lead to do what?
I'm teasing. It's a show joke. If your phone goes off in the middle of the show, it's a fine. But I'm teasing.
I think the way that Alabama was able to answer was it Trey Donaldson that hit the shot to go up 1?
Yes.
That first lead that Auburn had in the game, or in the second half, you really felt the energy from the Auburn fans. You really felt like, I mean, from where we were sitting, we were lower, and the Auburn fans were kind of up in the upper levels, and they kind of surrounded. So it created this really interesting effect where the chants from Auburn fans would kind of echo downward. And it made it sound really loud. And so whenever Auburn would go on a run, like the Auburn fans got loud, to their credit. So as that continued and they kept coming back, you knew Auburn was going to make a run in the second half. You knew they were going to punch Alabama in the mouth, and you were going to have to see how they responded. It took them a minute to respond because I think Auburn opened up on like a 9-0 run. It took a minute. It took like 4 minutes for Grant Nelson to score that really important bucket. But once Auburn finally took the lead, a lot of times when teams are coming back and they finally take that lead, that's like a jumping point. And they're like, oh, we have it now. And for Alabama to take the lead right back, and not only it just be a bucket and get a 1-point lead, but it be an and one against Auburn's best player, Janai Broome, and it being Mark Sears, kind of the guy who's the engine of this Alabama offense, for it to be him to make that bucket and make the free throw, go up by 2. I think that was an incredibly vital moment because Alabama didn't look back from that point. It got close, but Alabama didn't give the lead back up. So I think only letting Auburn lead the game in the second half for those 12 seconds, however, 12, 15 seconds, however many it was, that was, to me, the most important out of those three.
All right, so I think you're probably right. I do agree with you. I think you're probably right. Let's kind of end this bad boy with Grant Nelson, because Grant has underwhelmed. Let's just be frank. Has underwhelmed in his Alabama season so far. He's had some moments, absolutely had some moments, and you've seen him on the defensive end really fighting over the last couple of weeks. He has been fighting on the defensive end, but the offense just has been like walking through quicksand, just stepping, like running on a beach. Just not really, hasn't really been able to get it going. But last night he airballs the 3, he gets the dunk. Rylan Griffin says he challenged him on the bench, and Coach Hoach talked about how the best teams he's had are player-led teams. Grant, okay, he gets an offensive rebound. I mean, his second half, this is the sucker in me, this is the fan in me, that his second half, Can that propel him into a strong rest of the SEC season on the offensive end? He doesn't have to hit threes, but getting to the rim, being aggressive, just kind of finding some toughness and really doing some of the dirty work. He had 12 second half points. He had, 8 second half rebounds, ended up with his first double-double. Will this – I mean, in a rivalry game, it's not like he just played, Southeast Missouri Tech or whatever. This was probably the best big in the league in Denied Room. This is a good performance for Grant Nelson. Can he take it going forward? What will it mean for him going forward?
I think that dunk, I almost picked that dunk because of how important Grant Nelson was at the end of the game. I think after that dunk, kind of the second half showed what Grant Nelson needs to be for Alabama. Because he's not what maybe fans or analysts hyped him up to be. He's not a 18 point per game scorer. He's not the ball handler against he's not necessarily as versatile against some of these bigs that we thought he could be. But that doesn't mean he still can't be effective. And I think now seeing over half of a season of Grant Nelson, what he's best at is putting his head down, getting offensive rebounds, getting defensive rebounds, being as stout as he can be on the defensive end, and scoring inside. He's not the greatest shooter. We have seen that. But after that reverse dunk, he started to attack a lot harder than he had previously. He started to attack the rim with force, and he started to attack the glass too. He also is a great free throw shooter, which is huge. Because down the stretch, he made a number of plays. One of them obviously was the putback dunk to go up by 4 or 5 with a minute left. Obviously, that was massive. But I think almost an equally important play was the possession before that. I think somebody missed a jumper, and he just out-jumped Chad Baker-Mazara and said, I'm getting this rebound. He jumped up, got the rebound, got fouled, and was able to knock down both free throws. And so he just made play after play with rebounding, with scoring inside after he kind of shook off the confidence issue. I think that dunk was huge. He's tried to hit a couple of those in some of these games. He tried against Mississippi State and got fouled. And then I think he tried in another game and either missed or got fouled. But it's all confidence with him. He's a capable basketball player. He's just had one of the weirder, longer slumps than I've seen, especially from a big man, to not be able to consistently finish on drives and things like that. And so against a team like that, like Auburn, with such good bigs in a rivalry game, that's going to go a long way. And I think he is honestly the X factor for this Alabama team, because whenever he's playing, not to the level people expected in the preseason, but to the level that we now understand he is capable of, it makes Alabama a really hard team to beat, because it adds a whole kind of new dimension to Alabama's front court that they don't otherwise have when he's not playing well.
Absolutely. We kind of know what we're going to get with Mark Sears, and Aaron Estrada's kind of what he's going to. Same with Ryland and Luttrell. They're going to hit some three-pointers. You got to get that 8 to 12 points out of Grant Nelson. You got to get that 7 to 10 rebounds from Grant, and maybe an assist or two. Absolutely. And golly, the sucker in me is all in. Let's go see what we can do the rest of the year. All right, let's finish with some rapid fire. This is Blake Byler of BamaCentral.com, Blue Collar Unplugged. Make sure you subscribe to Blue Collar Unplugged with Blake Byler, Jacob Pickle, and Matthew Gibson. We'll go rapid fire real quick. Nick Dunlap today, he was in Coleman Coliseum last night, got a big old standing ovation after his PGA Tour win this past weekend. You can read about it on BamaCentral.com. Matthew Gibson was in the Malmore athletic facility today. Nick Dunlap declares he's going to the PGA Tour. He's leaving school, going pro. Your quick thought?
No reason not to. I mean, he's a 20-year-old kid. I mean, he's been as good as he is this early in his career. I don't see why not. Go make some money. Obviously he loves his teammates. He loves Alabama from what we've seen. But that's a business decision, and that's one you've got to make if you're as good and as talented as he is, as young as he is. Go ahead, get on the tour, start playing some good golf, make some money. You got to.
He just lost $1.5 million. He just left $1.5 million on the table. So it's kind of like, obviously the PGA Tour win was huge, and that's more important than the money. More money will come for him. But yeah, for him to win and have such a huge weekend and be like, oh, but we're giving the prize money to the second place guy. Right. Maybe NCAA needs to, in the age of NIL, they need to address that. Like, he basically earned that money over the weekend with his name, image, and likeness. They need to address that. But great for Nick Dunlap declaring he's going to the PGA Tour. Last one for us, Blake Byler, is with football. Another commit came in this morning while we're live. Noah Carter declares he's committing to the University of Alabama. He was committed to Washington, edge rusher out of Arizona. He was committed to Washington. He has, in the same vein as Julian Sayin and Jameer Grimsley, been released from his letter of intent from Washington, and he's committing to Alabama. So in the span of 20, I can't tell time, 18 hours or so. 18 hours, Kalen DeBoer pulls in Ryan Williams and Noah Carter. Oh, but he can't recruit in the South. Whoa, how important is Ryan Williams and then, Noah Carter, just a little cherry on top?
Williams is incredibly important because he's one of those, once every couple years can't miss prospects. Like if you've seen Ryan Williams play football, and I got the pleasure to go see him in the 6A state title game at Bryant-Denny Stadium, he was very clearly the best football player on the field as a junior. He's still getting better, reclassified obviously to 2024, is going to be in this Alabama offense. But I think it just sends a message that Kalen DeBoer and this staff can foster a relationship with this kid that they didn't know, didn't really have ties to. The only Alabama staffers that really had ties to him were Freddie Roach, and whatever other members of the staff. But the guys that I think Ryan Williams were closest to were Coleman Wiggins, the wide receivers coach, who's now at Texas A&M, and Travaris Robinson, the DB's coach, who was a great recruiter, now at Georgia. So those guys gone, Kalen DeBoer's staff is able to meet this kid, foster a relationship with him, so much so that not only does he commit, but he doesn't even complete all of his visits. I think that speaks volumes, the fact that he didn't even finish out his recruitment. He didn't take his visit to Texas. He didn't take his visit to Auburn, who we know was kind of rolling out the red carpet and really wanted him, pushing very hard, and had been even trying to flip him before he decommitted, before Saban's retirement. So for DeBoer to be able to do that, very, very strong start, and not only to his recruiting, but also a foundational piece, a foundational player for Ryan Williams is going to be around Alabama for 3 years, barring any transfer portal entries. We know how college football is today. But we can assume that Ryan Williams is going to be around for 3 years as one of the best players in the offense, if not the best player in the offense. We've seen what Kalen DeBoer and Ryan Grubb and Jamarcus Shepard have done with wide receivers in their offenses. So it's going to be huge for Alabama next season. It's huge for Alabama as far as a recruiting standpoint, and it's huge for DeBoer to be able to kind of stake his claim on an in-state prospect immediately, start to build more of those relationships. I mean, we know he's been out on the recruiting trail for days now. He did his Pat McAfee hit yesterday from the side of the road in the car on the recruiting trail. So he's getting it going. He's only been on the job for a couple weeks now, but absolutely a strong start even after all of the transfer portal entries.
Well, Blake Byler, it's been a lot of fun hanging out with you today. Anything you want to tell the people about Blue Collar Unplugged or about yourself, or any sports topics that I've left off the table that you want to address today before we get on out of here?
Yeah, not much. We're working on a new Blue Collar Unplugged episode. We should depends on, we don't know if we're going to have it before or after the LSU game. Really, we're working on a potential guest to have on. Obviously, we had Brian Passing last time, but we'll see if we end up getting this guest. It might shift the timeline of when the next episode comes out. But within the next 3-4 days. We will have an episode out to talk about this Auburn game, potentially talk about the LSU game, and everything else.
Well, make sure you follow Blake Byler at Blake Byler45. Subscribe to Blue Collar Unplugged, just like you have already subscribed to the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral. I'm subscribed to Blue Collar Unplugged. He's subscribed to the Joe Gaither Show. You should be subscribed to both on YouTube, on Facebook, on Twitter, on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on Amazon. You can read Blake Byler's takeaways from last night's game right there on the cover of BamaCentral.com. You can check out news on Noah Carter, check out news on Nick Dunlap, and, of course, on Ryan Williams right there on BamaCentral.com. Follow BamaCentral at BamaCentral on the X machine, at BamaCentral SI on Instagram, and at Alabama Crimson Tide on Sports Illustrated on Facebook. Blake, man, you going to stay dry? You got a big day today? Hey, how are you celebrating your double championship? Before we get out of here, Blake Byler, obviously it's not Alabama, but coaching some youths around town, won 2 titles yesterday. You celebrating a milkshake? You getting the JCUL milkshake?
We'll go see. Yeah, we're going to go see the boys today. We're going to celebrate for sure.
Excellent. Thanks so much for your time and celebrate very hard. We'll see you on Saturday back in Coleman Coliseum.
All right. Sounds good.
Absolutely. That's Blake Byler joining us, and I appreciate him giving me the expertise, the balance, because I often get lost in the sauce of the feeling. And we're going to get out of here for the day. You are paying attention to BamaCentral.com because Mike Pursier just told me that Coach Kalen DeBoer was on the Dan Patrick Show. We're going to check that out. We'll find out kind of what he said and see if he said anything notable. I'll be back tomorrow. We'll talk about Noah Carter. We'll talk about Ryan Williams. I did get a chance to meet Roll Tide Willie yesterday and Chad. They were great people. It was Coleman Coliseum. I am still jacked up. I can feel the electricity in my forearms, just like the adrenaline from last night. It was crazy. I got to give a lot of credit to the Auburn fans. They did show up. The Alabama fans showed up as well. It was a wild time in Coleman Coliseum. I hope you were there, and I hope you make plans to be there on Saturday. So come back and join us tomorrow on the Joe Gaither Show. We'll have another episode as we round out the week. This was the Joe Gaither Show on BamaCentral and BamaCentral.com.